The Senate preparing to vote on President Trump's budget deal ahead of the next recess. And while the deal is expected to pass, several Republican senators are planning to vote against that deal, including our next guest. Joining us right now is Senator Rick Scott. And Senator, it's good to see you today.
Good morning. I know people worked really hard. I think President Trump and Steve Mnuchin and Mitch McConnell and Richard Shelby. And I know it's complicated in a divided government, but I'm worried about the debt. I paid down debt. I paid off a third of the state debt when I was governor. There's no focus up here on the debt. We can't have $22 trillion worth of debt growing $1 trillion a year and then not have a consequence at some point.
What has been the response from the administration when you tell them that?
Well, I mean, look, they would like, President Trump, he'd like everybody to agree with everything he does. I know they worked hard. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to get things done up here, but we've got to start focusing on this debt. And there's some simple, and you can just look around every day and you see just waste. The Peace Corps is spending, I think, $4 million a year teaching English in China while trying to steal in our technology. Why are we doing that? I mean, there's so many ways that we see waste up here, and we've got to put more focus on it. That's what I'm going to do up here.
Your vote's not going to matter. It's probably going to pass anyway. But would you still vote no if it meant that there was no budget deal and the government was shut down at some point?
Absolutely. We've got to have, I don't want government to shut down, but let's have a legitimate conversation about how do we spend our money up here? Let's stop the waste. Let's live within our means. We do it at the state. I paid off $10 billion worth of debt. I cut $10 billion of taxes. We cut 20% of our regulation, and we added 1.7 million jobs. This is all doable, but you got to make choices. Up here, what's happening is everybody gets everything. So There's no tough choices made. It doesn't make any sense. It's not the way the real world works. You can't run your family like that.
What would you go back to? Because obviously setting priorities about what to cut, that's where you run into trouble when you've got divided government and two parties that see things pretty differently. What would you do if you were responsible for a compromise? Would you go back to kind of where we stood, where both sides were going to have to agree to things they didn't like to do?
Of course. You don't get, that's the way that our government was set up. No one gets everything they want. But the way you ought to think about it is we should say, we collect, $3+ trillion worth of taxes a year. How are we going to allocate those dollars? You do it like your family has to do it, like a business has to do it. You say, how am I going to allocate those dollars the best way? And let's make choices for our kids and our grandkids. They're the ones going to pay for this, so we're spending the money, and they have to pay off the debt. No one thinks that way, that's what's happening, but that's exactly what's happening up here.
So, Senator, what would you eliminate?
Well, let's just start going program by program, but I'll give an example. The Peace Corps came in to tell me how it makes sense for them to continue to stay in China and spend $4 million a year teaching English to the same country that's stealing our technology. Let's just go agency by agency. It's what I did in state government. There were 4,000 lines in the budget in Florida, and from my first budget, I went line by line, and I said, what do we get for
but let's talk big numbers. The Peace Corps, $4 million in China and the Peace Corps, we can debate that, but is going to be a rounding error in the grand scheme of things. What would be a big, if you had to go after a big piece of this, what would you do?
I think you have to look at every agency and say, should the federal government be doing this? Or maybe, look, it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It's the idea that we only are collecting $3+ trillion in taxes, so we have to look at everything we're doing and say, let's prioritize it. So you take every agency and you do what you do with your family and your business. You say, I'd like to do all these things, but I don't have the money to do all these things. So let's look at what's the highest priority. We want to make sure people can get health care. We want to make sure people have other things that we care about. But we've got to and we have to have a military. So my highest priority is going to always be the military. I want to be able to defend the freedom of this country. It's the most important thing to me and my family.
Senator, we also have the China trade talks. Our delegation looks like they've left Shanghai. We haven't heard any announcements of any potential progress being made, but it also does seem a bit cordial, at least at this point. You don't think that a China trade deal is going to get done anytime soon, do you?
No, this is the thing about it. This is a group of negotiators that have never lived up to what they say. They don't even comply with WTO. They're stealing our technology. So I think it's very difficult to think that they're going to poof like that, change their mind and say, oh yeah, we're going to comply. We're going to open up our markets. They're not going to do it unless they have to do it, and I don't think they feel the pressure yet to do it. I filed a bill that says it's called the Prime Act. It says Americans ought to know when you buy something online where it's made. So hopefully Americans will buy more American products, because I think that's what they ought to do if they want more jobs in this country. I've got a bill I'm filing that says we're not going to buy any more drones from China. We're worried about Huawei. We ought to be worried about these things. So I told you about the Peace Corps. I think we ought to look at China as a competitor and treat them like a competitor that doesn't comply with whatever they say they're going to do. They're not a fair negotiator.
You have support for those bills that you just mentioned, the Prime Act, and
I believe I'm going to get them done. It's just, you just up here, what you do is I'm brand new senator. You just slowly start working through individual by individual, and you build up support. But I think all those things are going to happen.
Senator, if things quiet down a little in the economy, and I don't know, the president is seen by a large percentage of people as being too divisive or something, and we do get one of these people in from last night. I mean, you're talking about worrying about debt now. I mean, what would we look like if that were to happen? That's a possibility. You have to consider that possibility.
So that's why everybody's got to be involved in these elections. Right. But I mean, $100 trillion worth of debt, I think, is what the proposals. I mean, go around. People don't want socialized medicine. They like their employer-sponsored health plan. They know the Green New Deal.
Don't like those tweets. Well, some of them, and that could happen. Anyway, I think we got to run, Senator. I'm just,
All right.
The caution flag should be going up.
Have a good day.
All right.